When it comes to communication between staff and parents, is it more like oil and water?
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Running camp comes with enough moving parts. UltraCamp keeps registration, payments, and communication in one place so you can spend less time juggling systems and more time building an incredible camp experience. Learn more at ultracamp management.com/camphacker. Hello, Camp Mavericks, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast, brought to you by UltraCamp and the Camp Resilience Checkup Diagnostic from me. My name is Travis Allison. I'm a summer camp consultant specializing in helping camps reclaim their staff time, build resilience, and reignite their purpose.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hudson. I'm a camp consultant. I help camps and youth organizations turn their values into real lived experiences for staff and kids. I focus on building stronger communities through practical leadership, equity, and connection.
Hi, I'm Chris Rehs-Dupin. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the president and founder of T-Camp and support camps in becoming spaces of belonging for campers of all genders and sexualities, with a super fun sub-focus in supporting camps and interfacing with angry parents. I am also a parent and in the thick of being a camp parent, so I get to see this from both sides.
Wow. Everybody, I'm Matt Kaufman, camp director at Camp Ramacoy, day camp right outside of Manhattan, about 30 miles northwest of Manhattan, and also the author of The Campfire Effect, How to Engineer Belonging in a Disconnected World.
Matt, welcome to CampHacker. We're grateful to have you here today. I know that you've done some of the other shows, but I just wanted to connect you with our audience. I think that your book is really interesting, and I also know you have a great perspective on our topic today. So how did you get connected to camp in the first place, Matt?
I've been at camp my whole life. I don't know anything other than camp. I started at Camp Ramacoy when I was 4 years old, and I never left. So this has been my entire life. I don't really know. I've never taken a summer vacation in my life, to be honest with you. So I started as a camper. I was a very, very shy camper. I was not the prototypical camper. I struggled for a long time, and I spent 11 years as a camper, and eventually became a counselor here, became a division leader, became an administrator, and came on full time, and wound up being one of the directors here at camp. So my educational background is in engineering, and I think that what really appeals to me about camp, for me personally, is that camp is a lot harder for me than school was. So school came really easy for me, but camp was always a challenge. And I think because of that challenge, it made me a better person, a more resilient person, and forced me to learn things that I likely would not have learned if I hadn't had the camp experience. So it holds a pretty special place in my heart.
Yeah. In super quick overview, Matt, what is the book about?
The Campfire Effect is about, we talk as camp people, we love camp, and we talk about the magic of camp. We see kids transform, staff transform, and we use the phrase the magic of camp. And I don't believe in magic because I'm a grown-up. So I did a little bit of research, or a lot of research actually, and I realized that it's not magic, it's science. There's things going on in our brains, there's chemicals going on in our brains, and the book is basically combines science and stories to explain that what we do at camp really has foundations in science, and we can actually be an example to the rest of the world about how they can do things better in terms of creating an environment for human beings to flourish. So I tried to keep it a balance of science and stories, because I know that too much science can be overwhelming for people, including me. So that's in 30 seconds what the book's about.
Amazing. And the audiobook just came out, yeah? The audio version
It
just
did.
came out?
I'm very, very excited about the audiobook. I am a big Audible fan, so I was much more excited to see the book on Audible than on Amazon.
And did you read it, Matt?
Did I read the
Audio,
what?
the audio version. Who did the audio version for you?
Oh, did I read the audio version? No, I didn't. I actually wanted one of my co-directors to read it because I love his voice and he's just fantastic. But
Yeah,
it takes like 40 hours to do an audiobook like this, and we just didn't have the time. So I got a professional.
right. Amazing. I can't wait to hear it. It's really fun. So welcome to CampHacker. We're grateful you're here, Matt.
Thanks. Good to be here.
And Chris, welcome back. We're glad to have you here again. You also have a book that is pending.
Yeah,
I've had a chance to read
absolutely.
it. I'm excited about it too.
Yeah, so it is called Impounded, and it is actually not about camp, but also about camp. It's about
Mm-hmm.
what happens when you take a camp person and put them in a completely different environment, which for me happened to be the city impound lot. It also talks a lot about the brain science of anger, which is something, when we talk about parents, when we talk about impound lots, it comes up.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, we'll give folks a chance at the end and in the show notes at camphacker.tv to find the links to both of these books to pre-order Chris's and to pick up Matt's. But grateful that you both are here. Before we start the topic, I just wanted to ask those of you who are listening, do you know that you can leave us fan mail or effectively send us a text from your podcast app? You'll see at the top, you can send us fan mail. And you can do it right from your app while you're listening if you have a question or a comment. And I wanted to highlight this comment in which I'm going to swear because I like swearing and it's in the comment. So you got 35 seconds to close your kids' ears. The fan mail we got was, holy shit, guys. This episode was like taking a cold plunge this morning. I appreciate the data and the insight. This is the kind of stuff that makes the CampHacker pod so important to our industry. There needs to be conference sessions on this topic in the next go round of session submissions. So thank you to Kirsty commenters. And grateful to anybody who sends us some fan mail via your app. We're grateful for that. Today, we are talking about how parents and staff interact. And this question actually comes out of some data work I've been doing on the most commonly asked questions of camp pros on the internet. And this is in the top 25 questions most often asked. How do we deal with parents interacting directly with our staff? And obviously that is a daily concern for day camps and maybe weekly or bi-monthly concern for overnight camps where kids come and stay for a period of time. But I think there's lots of lessons to learn from that, lots of things to talk about. Matt, I'm going to start with you. Do you folks have some structure around parents talking to your just their kids counselors or other staff at camp who aren't like leadership people?
So it's difficult to create too much structure for
Yeah.
certain situations. The biggest one for us is the bus counselors. But bus counselors see every parent on their route twice a day,
Yeah.
and it's difficult to create structure around that. The thing that we try to train our bus counselors about is to share with the parents that if they were to speak for 1 minute to every parent on the route, the bus would show up 15 minutes late to camp. So we try to get that across to parents, and we try to encourage parents to speak to our office. So we are trying to create some structure, but at the same time, there is a positive to genuine face-to-face interaction between staff and parents. So I think that it's very easy to view all of this as in a negative way.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not necessarily the truth all the time. There's a lot of positive that comes out of it. A lot of day camps have counselors calling parents and doing parent phone calls. We don't allow that. That's not our model. Our model is to have a division leader, a unit head, who's a teacher, or social worker, something like that, to make the phone calls. So I think your question is about structure. I think we try our best, but at the same time, you cannot completely create a structure around this, and I don't think that we necessarily want to, because you lose some of that genuine interaction.
Chris Rehs-Dupin, your thoughts on structure around staff and parents?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that each camp can make kind of their own decision of what that interface looks like. But I think one of the most essential components is that anybody who does interface with parents have appropriate training
Yeah.
in what that looks like, how to hold boundaries and empathy simultaneously, and also what are the escalation points? At what point is
Yes.
a staff member no longer the person to support a parent in any situation, whether it's an angry situation, whether it's a gratitude situation. But I think clarifying those expectations makes it easier for both the parent and the staff member to understand their roles in the interaction.
Yeah. And I love a
That,
good decision tree. So
that's what I
that's
was going
great.
to echo.
So this is the time.
Yeah, I think people get nervous about staff and parent interactions because the goals are misaligned. Like any
Mm,
conversation between staff and parent, do they have the same goal? That's the
right.
first question, right? And depending whether it's a day camp or a sleepaway camp and the nature of that contact, it's like, how do we set that up ahead of time? Spoiler alert, I'm going to suggest intention and preparation, right? Really drawing the boundaries around that for your staff during staff training. And if your staff is in contact with parents, such as like a pick up and drop off at a day camp, or if I know some sleepaway camps, some sleepaway camps indulge parents in that they'll tell the like some parents want to call every day and the camp will say no problem. And I'm like, okay, that's a different thing. But maybe not so much because I'm talking about drawing boundaries. I think really spelling it out for the staff and for the parents, what can you expect from communication for the other and tell them what the goal is, right? Especially like a day camp situation, Matt, like you said, like make it really clear, like, when the bus pulls up, then is not a time to, unless you have 2 sentences of important information, great. Otherwise, you have to send us an email or call us and just be very clear about that. I just think letting people know ahead of time what they're getting into. All this said, um, I think in a sleepaway camp situation, I'm not certain why the frontline staff member is speaking to the parent. I could only imagine that raises anxiety for everyone involved. And I do mean everyone. I mean that staff member, the parent, the child, and the supervisor. It just it I'm not telling anyone what they're doing is wrong, but don't do that because I don't know what results you're looking for, but I don't think you're going to get them. You're going to have to dig up out of that hole. That's my opinion.
Chris, I think that's so interesting, and I think you brought up roles, and I actually think this is one of the pieces in communication that are the hardest because parents and camps often have very different roles, right? Like as a parent, I understand that my responsibility is to keep my child safe. And the camp's responsibility is to keep everyone's child safe. And so sometimes that gives us kind of that natural friction point. And I think it can really that can be the kind of like the seed of the conflict when we have so much care and just not always knowing where exactly it should go.
And I think so. This is from me, from all of you, but Matt, you said something about the worry about the I get kind of the anxiety of parents and staff talking to each other, and even that parents talking to the camp. Like at a certain point, my philosophy on talking to parents has changed a lot. And I think that I would communicate with them much differently now than I did as I was a camp director. And a lot of that comes from research that Joanna Warren Smith and Dan Weir and I did that said that people who don't choose a camp for their kid, the main reason why they don't choose it is not that it doesn't look like it's fun. The main reason they don't choose is because it's not safe. It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't look safe. It doesn't present as safe. And I think a lot of those camps probably are. They're just not good at telling that part of the story. And so that's a bigger comms. That's not today's discussion. But that's a bigger comms thing that we need to be thinking about.
Right. Well, something that you said just spurred a thought in my head, which is that being a parent at a camp is hard. It's a job. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to remember. And I think that we need to do a difficult job of training parents, not just training our staff. And that feels a little counterintuitive to us and it's a challenge for sure. And one of the things that we need to do a better job of getting across to parents is that when we hire staff, we're hiring them because of how they interact with children, not because of how they interact with parents, at least our
Yeah.
frontline staff,
Yes.
right? Administrators, leaders, that's a different story. But we've said that to parents before, and I don't know that it resonates with all of them, but it is true that our staff, many of them that are bus counselors are 18 to 21, and they don't know how to speak to parents. Nor should they, right? That not at that age. So I think that we try to get that across. However, the reality of the situation is that when we hire staff, when we're hiring for bus counselors, when we're hiring for certain positions, I think the reality is that they do need to interact with parents, and they do need to make parents feel safe and confident in what they're doing. And I often say that at our camp for parents, most of the camp experience is how they interact with a bus counselor, which is a scary thought, right? So we at our camp, we've over the past 10 years or so, we've taken a bit of a different approach with how we hire bus counselors, and over 50% of our campers now have a bus counselor that's over 21 years old, which is a difficult thing for a day camp. And most of those are international staff. So we hire a small amount of international staff who are generally speaking more mature. I mean, they're willing to fly across the world and spend 10 weeks in a country that's not their own. So they're generally a little bit more mature. And when we interview them, one of the main things we're looking for is, do they inspire confidence in the parents? So I think that's a long way of saying that I think the parents need to meet the camp a little bit in understanding that our staff works with children and that's what they're great at. But the camp also has to meet the parent halfway and say, hey, I think we need to do a little bit better job of hiring and training for the skills that inspire confidence in the parents.
I think now that I'm thinking through what you said, Matt, there's something that you said in there. I think we have to train parents what to, all right, this isn't a well-formed thought. You know how, like, if you're a parent, you're aware that when you send your kid to school, there's going to be a parent-teacher meeting. It's going to happen in September, October, and that's going to happen again in the spring. We're all vaguely aware of this because we all went to school. And remember, it's like part of the culture. A lot of parents, when they send their kids to camp, they have no idea what to expect as far as the communication. It's not like school, right?
Yeah.
They're not, you don't get to call me every day and ask about, oh, they came home with this thing. You're not calling me to ask me about homework. You know what I mean? If it's a day camp, the kid can't call us later to ask questions about an assignment. Like, I'm thinking a lot about, especially because some of the camps I work with, they're smaller and urban, and it's a lot of first time camp parents. I think it's like definitely the handbook, but I think it's part of their orientation. This is who we are. This is what we do at different levels, and these are the interactions you can expect at different levels. I think a lot of people yada 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 their way through that, but now that I'm sitting and thinking about it, no one tells you how to interact with the adults at camp. Like, we just assume, like, oh, you're taking care of my kid, just like the school teachers do. I should have the same access to you as I do to my child's teacher. Can I have your email address? Can I have your phone number? No, you can't. And this is why, right? And it's a lot of what you said, Matt, is like, these frontline people, that's not their job. If you have questions about your kid, please call me, but certainly don't speak to your counselor. They are part of a team, and their part is not speaking with you. I just think that needs to be explicitly stated, either like in an orientation or in your staff handbook. And it's only to your benefit. A lot of people just don't know.
And I think as a day camp, most of our new campers are fairly young, and the majority of them are coming from preschools. And we feel like we do a fantastic job of parent communication relative to most other camps out there. We spend a lot of resources on parent communication, but compared to preschools where parents drop off their child and they have an interaction with the teacher every day, and many of these preschools now have webcams in the classroom, which forget about the creepiness of that, put that aside for a second. Our parent communication does not hold a candle to that level of interaction with the teacher. And it's very difficult to explain that to a parent, to say, hey, we think we do this very well. And from the parent's perspective, it is much worse than the preschool. However, from a healthiness perspective, sitting and watching your child on a webcam every day probably isn't very healthy.
No.
So it's a difficult challenge for us.
I mean, if you have the time to do that, don't send your kid to daycare. I don't know. That's a massive judgment. That's a massive judgment. That just sounds really wild to me. I'm sorry, Travis, I cut you off.
Well, I think part of the difference in the relationship between school and camp is also, despite the fact that it's not true, it feels like parents are paying for camp and they're not paying for school. If there's this free thing that's not free, but this free thing that they get to have all this interaction with the caregiver at that organization, and now you're making me pay for this product, and I get less interaction, I get less interfacing, I get less updates. I can imagine, for those who don't have a camp experience in their background, that must feel weird from the outside.
I think it depends how you pitch it, though, right?
Well, sure. Everything's a communication problem.
Yeah, I think it's how you pitch it, because like the reason why you're sending your kid to camp is not, communication between the professionals. That's not why you're sending your kid. That's why I think the goals are important, right? And I think like you said, like the amount of interaction I think people have with kids' teachers, they expect a teacher to explain things from like assignments to behavior and policies of the organization. And I don't know, maybe some teachers are empowered to do that. When I was a school teacher, I was talking to parents all the time about all of those things. But of course, I have a social work background, so no one was worried about me, right?
Yeah.
But a 17-year-old or a 19-year-old, and the parent is like asking them to explain their behavior, which they saw on a webcam, that becomes wild. Okay, a moment for me. The webcams are crazy, but it speaks to this topic right now. If you have a webcam inside the room where kids are being taken care of, the way that everyone needs to be briefed about what to do with that information, right? So parents, if you're watching this webcam, what can you do with this information? If you see something that you find alarming, what's the process? What's the protocol? Because that's going to have to be very specific. And if I was a worker, that would be, as a supervisor, I love it, right? I'm very Big Brother Orwellian in that way. But as a worker, downsides are constant there. But yeah, if the staff is being monitored, then the parents seriously have to be told how to interact with that technology.
I completely agree. And I think that something that brings up for me is like when we over communicate or when we do deep communication, like webcam communication about what is happening at camp, it erodes the trust that parents actually have to have in the camp to resolve.
Yeah, fair.
Right?
That's a great point.
It gives us this feeling, right? Like I'm watching my kid's webcam and I see my kid get in a fight with somebody else. Now I feel like I'm in control of resolving that fight, even though I'm sitting at home having my coffee. And I think about that, about a lot of this communication is so much of what happens at camp is kids resolving conflict. And if we over communicate with parents, the kids don't get that skill of navigating those conflicts themselves, and it doesn't inspire confidence in the parents.
Yep. Exclusive for CampHacker listeners, grab UltraCamp's free guide, The Parent Experience Checklist. Practical steps to simplify registration and keep families coming back. Download at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. Parents don't want clunky processes, and you don't want constant phone calls. UltraCamp helps you simplify registration with mobile-friendly forms, offer payment plans that work for your families, reduce calls and emails with automated reminders, and keep parents engaged with built-in communication tools. UltraCamp helps you create smooth, stress-free parent interactions so your team can focus on camp, not customer service. Learn more at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. I think that, just picking up on other little pieces, I think it's important that we directly talk to staff about this. Obviously, the decision tree is a part of that, but it's worth training folks on and letting them know what the expectation. And it's worth acknowledging that we all go into the situation or into summer staff training these days saying these are young adults who don't know how to talk to other young adults. And then they're also going to have to talk to adults. And if an adult is talking to them who's not their supervisor, like it is a parent, then chances are pretty good there's a reason that that parent's upset. And so we need to be thoughtful about what you do in that situation. Gabrielle, who's a longtime co-host on this show, they had a formula for young staff taking parents to drop off their kid in their tent. And so they gave their staff a bit of a social script to go through that would engage the parents, want to build trust with them, tell a bit of your own story, that kind of thing. But that was such a neat experience for people who struggle to have face-to-face conversations, to at least give them something to work through, that I thought was a good shortcut for acknowledging that some of these conversations are going to happen, whether or not it's the right person to talk to. We don't have control over those things.
Right. Like, I think it's easy to hold the truth that young people, our 18 to 25, our 16 to 25-year-old staff might not have the experience of interfacing with parents, but they also didn't have the experience of being a lifeguard before they were taught how to be a lifeguard. So maybe it is more of a, Matt, what you said, of like, part of their job is to inspire confidence in parents. But we can't just say that. Like, we have to train that, and we have to talk about what that looks like. So Chris, what you were saying about just kind of the anxiety spiral of a staff member is anxious to talk to a parent, which makes the parent anxious about dropping off their kid, which makes them react, so it just like goes around in the circle. Like, maybe the disruption of that isn't to say we don't do this. It's to put those scaffolded things into place that makes it a more healthy interaction between the training and the boundaries for parent, the decision tree, the social script of what it looks like to disengage from that conversation. And maybe that's more of the answer than let's not do this.
Right.
I feel challenged. I feel like there's a correct answer here. I'm like trying to puzzle it out.
Interesting.
I feel like I'm like, because while you all were talking, I was thinking, I don't know if this was said, but in sum and substance, I remember thinking like, I certainly don't want to communicate to the parents that I do not trust this person to speak with them, right?
100%.
I don't want to say that. I don't want to say, they're 18 and they can't really talk to other adults, but by all means, can we have your 3-year-old for 8 hours today? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, as a parent, I'd be like, oh, wait. So you hire people who can't talk to adults. I know it's not the job function, but as a parent, that would make me a little, what else don't they know how to do? Like, what aspects of this job can they do? I'm just thinking like there's like a correct way to pitch this, I think, to people. And I think it's gonna be new behavior for parents. And you know what parents hate? Developing new behavior. They absolutely hate it. But oh man, I feel like we don't have time on this podcast, but I really want to I feel like this is a puzzle that can be solved.
Okay.
I feel like there is the right amount of direct communication that could solve it. And when I figure out, I'm going to write a book and make millions. And I'm not sharing it with anybody on this podcast.
Parenting books sell, man.
Cool. Yeah. I think there's, how do we empower? Okay, we don't want to empower the parents to reach out to anybody, but how do we give them the confidence of like the person who's watching your kids can do that? And I have every confidence in that. And then I want to say, but don't talk to them. But how do I push that? You know what I'm saying? How do I spin that positively? Like, oh, they're part of a team. This is their role. Their role isn't to communicate with you. As a parent, how does that hit you?
Yeah, I think the key there is it's managing the channel, right? It's making sure that parent questions are getting to the most impactful place. And a technique that I have worked with a lot of camps on is ensuring that they understand if this staff member is answering this question, like there is an energy drain somewhere else, right? If we are spending all of our time discussing the lost and found on the phone with parents, our camp leadership isn't in the position to make your child safe. So I think some of that safety language actually really works with parents of, I really want to be able to respond to this question, but right now my responsibility is keeping these 9-year-olds safe. And so let's make sure you get that question to the right place.
I'm going to challenge you there though, because listening to you raised my anxiety. It makes it sound like everyone there is juggling knives. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear like, oh, I can't ask a question because if I do, a child will die. Like that's too much. But there's a temper there. We can temper that a little bit. I'm trying to. Oh, we're gonna
I
figure it
think,
out.
Chris, I don't have an answer for you, but one thought that I have is I like to create systems and structures that create wins for everybody. And I didn't think of this until you were speaking, but I do realize that as we move forward in time, something we're doing here is we're trying to create structures so that the easiest way for a parent to communicate with someone is a path to
It's the
someone
right
who
way.
can answer that question.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
setting up a structure and a system like that might be the way to think about this, right? Like if the parent is if the easiest way for the parent to interact with camp is to speak to a 16-year-old, that's probably not a good system
Camp
for your
problem.
camp. Yeah, that's probably a
Yeah.
structural problem.
Absolutely.
And
Well done.
for us, it's difficult because of the bus counselor setup.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
as we're speaking, I'm thinking of, well, there are things we can do. There are changes we can make so that when a parent has a question or an issue, it's much easier for them to maybe pick up their phone and interact with someone. And we don't do that, of course, but I just have the idea as you guys were speaking. So I think that's a different way to do it. Instead of training and forcing people to do things that's not in their wheelhouse, change the structure and make everything go to people that are in their wheelhouse. Certainly easier said than done, but as long as we're facing a difficult problem, maybe we should just solve it the right way.
Mm. Can I ask a
Yeah.
question? I'm just
That
curious what you all.
reminds
Oh, sorry. No, you
me,
go,
well,
Travis.
that's the book nudge, right, man? It's the set up a system to make it easy for people to do the right thing or the thing that you
Hell
want
yeah.
them to do, make it just a little bit harder to do the thing you don't want them to do. Sorry for
So-
talking over you, Chris.
No. I'm just curious. I'm just curious what you all are gonna say. What? Actually, what's the right amount of communication with a parent? Officially, I was gonna say like, when does it become too much? But I think we're all aware of that. What's the right amount of communication? Like as far as we're concerned as camp professionals, and as far as the parents concerned, because I'm like, do those match up? That's always my first question. Do our expectations match? But then I was just reflecting back on myself. We're we're pretty high touch with the parents. Um, I'm just curious, like for you, what's in a program, what would be the right amount of communication?
I
I
don't know
don't
how you
think
can make
it's
that black and
that.
white.
I guess what I'm saying is like we we know what it's like when it's too much, right? When it becomes overwhelming, when it
Sure.
becomes problematic, right? But my whole thing for the past 20 minutes has been like, oh, be intentional, prepare. If you're going to prepare, then you have to have in mind how much communication with the parent is appropriate. And I'm saying, like, if we
Okay.
can enunciate, I'm getting close to solving the puzzle. If we can enunciate that, then it's easier to train them on it. But I feel like that's the part that we've been circling around it. But what do we expect from parents in these contexts?
Mm.
What is the
Mhm.
right amount of communication? I mean, we, at my camp, I had parents texting me every single day. They wanted proof of life pictures. I was looking on the website. Is my kid there? Yes, your kid's here. Where would they be? So I spent every meal doing proof of life pictures. That was the wrong level of communication. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like that
Yep.
was too much.
Mhm.
So what would be enough? Does
I
that
think
make
that
sense?
I think that I don't know that we're going to get to the answer of what is the right amount because I think it
Mhm.
is really going to deeply vary. But I think what we can do is, again, make those expectations clear, right? When I was working overnight camp, we had in all of our parent literature, we will call you if your child is injured or something happens in a way where they have to sit out of activities. That was it, right? If you don't hear from us otherwise, everything is good. And it goes back to the role piece. As part of the role of the parent is trusting the camp. And that is an essential
Mm.
thing that we need from that parent. And if they're unable to give that, if they are unable to not get a proof of life picture every day, we have to either adjust our behavior or adjust that expectation.
Mm.
You said something really smart. I mean, everything you say is
Again.
smart, Chris. But building trust with the parents. That's really what we're talking about. How do you build trust
Yep.
with the parents? Because the communication you have with them is an outgrowth of how they feel about leaving their child with you. So I guess that's really is like what can we do in our behavior and our marketing and messaging to build trust with the parent? That's step one. That's step one to solving the puzzle, everybody. We got that far.
Yes.
And that's what I was going to say. I don't think it's an amount. I think it's about trust and quality of communication, because I think we take the approach that parent communication is not a bad thing. We can get a lot of information from the parent. We can figure out how to give the child a better summer by communicating with the parent. And we've had children here where we talk to the parent every single day for 10 to 15 minutes, and that's perfectly appropriate for that child's situation. But if you're constantly spending your time trying to build trust with the parent, that's a different story. So I don't think it's an amount of communication. I think it's more about a quality of communication, and each child is a little bit different. And I like to frame it as though it's a partnership, and we can certainly get a lot of useful information if we can communicate effectively with the parents.
Well, Matt, I think that brings us to a close. That was well done. Thanks for bringing it around. And I'm grateful to the three of you for your thoughtful discussion on this point. I want to take a second before we move on to the tool of the week to just remind folks that, again, they can text us and let us know how they feel about our discussion on a topic or topic ideas. It also helps if you leave us a review on whatever app that you're listening to us on, or write us a note in YouTube. It just helps us to know how we're doing. And you could also go to ratethispodcast.com/camp, and there's a rating and reviews button there of ours. This means that we are on to our tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
Chris Hudson, what's your tool?
The way my anxiety spiked, like when the teacher calls on you, the way I was like, oh my God, am I going first? But I am prepared. But I am prepared. Let me just move some windows around. But no, I am totally prepared, right? Yes, absolutely. Okay, tool of the week. Ready for this? So I run a small program, and when we set it up, we had to make a PO box, and it was by my house. Over the years, having to go check that PO box and take out the pounds of trash, like the pounds of Uline catalogs, all sorts of stuff. Like, it was, the trip itself was frustrating enough. By the way, it's 2 blocks from my house, but that's not the point, right? The point is having to go in there and do it was annoying. So finally, we found this website, Traveling Mailbox. Are you familiar with this? Right? So what it is that they give you a static address, they receive the mail, and they scan it and send you pictures of it and say, which ones do you want and which ones can we delete? Can we just get rid of? Oh yes, travelingmailbox.com. Yes, you have to pay for it. No, it's not a lot, and it has saved me so much time and energy. It's great. So check that out, travelingmailbox.com. I really highly recommend it, especially if you run a small program, right? And you don't have like a static like camp site. It's just let someone else sort the spam for you.
Yeah. And even if you're a camp that has a summer address and a winter address, that makes a ton of sense.
Because that's the other thing is, like, we didn't want to switch addresses more than once ever. And this way, no matter where our camp moves to, we'll still get the mail in our inboxes.
Yeah. Amazing. Great tool. Matt, what's your tool?
My tool of the week is Claude Cowork. I love tech. I'm a big AI guy, and I've been using Claude Cowork for so many things the past, I would say, 2 or 3 weeks. If you're not familiar with it, it's a desktop app. It's a desktop version of Claude, and that means that it can manipulate files on your computer, and it can run longer tasks on your computer. It's a simplified version of something called Claude Code. And to give you an example of what I've done with it, I gave a couple of presentations at the Tri-State Camp Conference recently, and I took my existing presentations, I gave it to Claude Cowork, and I said, these are pretty boring. Can you turn these into single-page web files with animations that are worthy of a TED Talk? And I gave it a couple more information about color palettes that I like and things that I don't like. And I mean, I was just blown away. It was the coolest presentation that I've ever seen.
Wow.
So I could certainly talk for a long time about Claude Cowork, but if you haven't used it, give it a shot, especially if you have a paid version of Claude already. One caveat, Claude Cowork can manipulate and delete files in your computer, so you always want to be very careful when you use Claude Cowork.
It does ask you for permission all of the time. It almost too much, so you don't pay. You're like, yes, yes, yes. But anyway, one of the things I've been doing with a couple of our camps, and this is always a challenge to try these super techie things, but one of the things, the great frustration I hear in my job is registration software doesn't talk to email software. So you can give people emails about the registration and arrival, but you can't do it on the marketing side. And so when you're marketing to people who haven't re-registered, sometimes you have to use MailChimp or something like that. And we've been using Claude Code to move the updated registration file into MailChimp automatically, so that people who did sign up since your last email went out aren't getting the emails like, hey, you should register for camp, because that makes parents panic. If you send it, you should register for camp when they already have. And so just some of those little practical annoying things about the job, it helps tie some of the tech together. Great tool. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Chris, I'm excited for your tool too.
Yeah, absolutely. So the tool that I'm talking about is called EFA, which is almost it's a response triaging tool that helps folks right at the moment of any incident, or in the moment where you have an angry caregiver in front of you, helping that person understand whether they are experiencing discomfort, if they are feeling unsafe, or they are actually unsafe. Right now, people have a really hard time discerning between all three levels of those things, and they warrant very different responses. So giving staff an understanding of, is this a discomfort thing? Okay, if it's a discomfort thing, then we just need to recognize it as that and regulate. What we might not need to do is recognize that as a safety issue that warrants a higher response. So it's just a triaging tool that helps people really decide what their response level should be to even any given situation.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you. I love that. I love a tool that's helpful right away and fits into a big situation that we know folks are facing. So thank you. My tool of the week is a 3D printer, in particular the Bamboo series. And they have a low price one that gets incredibly good reviews called the A1. There is an A1 Mini. I don't think it's not going to make stuff big enough for what camp people need. As soon as you get used to a 3D printer, you seem to find lots of stuff to use it for. But Bamboo's on sale. We're recording this at the end of March, and they usually have a spring sale on their A1s. And it's about half price right now. So good printer, gets really well reviewed. Joe Richards, who many of you know from CampHacker and some of our other podcasts, has the A1 Mini and likes it, but I have heard him say, I wish that this was a little bit bigger. So that's my recommendation, the Bamboo A1 3D printer. Thank you. Thank you both for joining us for this call. Chris, if people have follow-up, can you remind them of the title of your book and how they get in touch with you?
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. You can find me at tcamp.com or chrisspeaksout.com.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here, Chris.
Absolutely.
All right. Matt, how can folks follow up with you?
You can email me at matt@ramakoy.com. RAMAQUUOIS.com, or you can visit my blog at www.ilove.camp.
Great domain. Such a great domain. I'm so happy for you that you got it. Matt, thanks for being here.
Good to be here. Thanks.
And Chris?
One doesn't find me. You simply become ready, and then I arrive. But if that doesn't work, you can send me an email, planetchris@gmail.com. Look me up at LinkedIn. I think I'm Chris Hudson 1 there, or on Instagram, I'm planetchris1 there. Or check out my website, planetchris.net.
Beauty. Thanks, Chris. I'm going to take a second now. Thank you to our guests, of course, for joining us. But I want to highlight one other Go Camp Pro podcast that we think you should check out. And we'd love for you to check out the Day Camp Pod. Matt, is that the one that you were last on? Was Day Camp or Camp Owners?
Those are camp owners recently.
Oh, there you go. So this time, check out Camp Owners because there's a great episode from Matt on there. Matt's getting into all the shows, but we would be grateful if you search for Go Camp Pro Podcasts in your app and subscribe to those there.
And you two have already been thanked, but I'm going to do it one more time. Thank you so much for being here. You are great. And also, we want to thank the sponsors of this week's episode, as well as our editor, Ryan Vandertoren, and of course, Go Camp Pro's executive producer of podcasting, Matt Wilfred.
Thanks for the evening, friends.
The CampHacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. CampHacker, bringing your world into focus.